Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube segment, I want to talk about a little bit about life before the internet and about life at the time that we have the internet, which of course is current and during what we've experienced during a little bit during the time that the internet has been around. So anyway, well, the first thing is, life before the internet. I mean, of course, we had things that might have been a little bit harder. Life may have been simpler then as well, though. I mean, keep in mind, many instances, you can't even apply for a job application unless you have fundamental or basic internet skills. The thing about it is, well, going back for me in time, I could remember like a lot of us out there. I mean, in the 80s, I could remember going using microfilm to research things, going through books, encyclopedias, as opposed to now when you can just go on to Google. I mean, that's one obvious thing that's really different as far as our current internet age. And prior to that, a thing too, though, is, I mean, understand that one of the basic things that most people are very cognizant of is the fact that because we go on the internet, we want to research something, it's very easy to do that, to go to google.com or some other search website, where you can search whatever it is you're trying to find. And the thing, though, is what people have to understand, a lot of people, they see the kids in school nowadays and say, oh, they have it so much easier. All they got to do is go online and research things. They don't necessarily have to go into books and look things up. They don't have to go to the microfilm, and it's less tedious and time consuming. But remember, though, people, that kids, in a way, they don't have everything easier. Yes, researching things, I mean, are much easier now because you have the online thing going. You have the internet. You have Google or whatever your search browser, whatever your website you're on, where you can actually search something, search certain criteria. The internet certainly facilitates learning. There's no doubt about that. But there's also, I mean, certain complications. I think, a lot of us may think of, but I think some of us might overlook at times. I mean, think about this. For kids now, kids have it easier with the Google or whatever, like I stated before, in terms of looking up information. But keep in mind that, I mean, let's take bullying. Kids being bullied, right? Now, back in yesteryear, the pre-internet era, now, as far as kids ever being bullied, it would just be in, more in-person, face-to-face. Now, you have double trouble, so to speak. You have the regular bullying that can go on, plus the cyberbullying, and I'm sure there's many kids that are bullied in both ways. Also, I mean, think about it. What's complicated now is that now it's very hard to have a really, like, you go on Facebook, for example. Now, apparently, from my understanding, it's like when you message people on Facebook, unless things have changed since the last time I looked this up, is that even though Facebook doesn't take your, they don't really maybe literally save your messages per se that you send to somebody, but they apparently memorize the characters. And the thing is, I mean, also people have to be so wary of being hacked. And nowadays, I mean, you have, as far as, I mean, you have to download a lot of times so much. Some people, I'm sure, have to download all kinds of software to try to prevent this from happening. Your banking information may not always be secure online. A lot of times people want you to have, I mean, like when you go to a bank, they often try to encourage you to set up some account online as well, set up some kind of something where you can actually access your account online and have online checking. So the thing is, it's almost like it's forced upon a lot of people to have to go on the internet for things. Now, another thing too, what I find interesting, I could state this by example. Now, some of you may have heard of this, some of you may have not. Now, you talk about, like playing games, like whether it's board games. Now, I want to talk about something. It's a sports simulation game. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called Stratomatic. That's the company that makes these games. And in the games, you could take teams from the past and have them play each other and have simulated sports matchups. Like, for instance, I could go to, you could take, like, for example, let's take Major League Baseball, for example. You could play, for example, the 1975 Reds against the 1927 Yankees and have a simulated matchup. You could play one game, you could do a full 7-game series, best of 7, 4 and 7 wins, of course. Now, the thing about this is, now they have a website now called whatifsports.com. Now the Stratomatic, what I'm talking about is the version, the board game version, which may take an hour, may take 2 hours, perhaps maybe to play a 9-inning game. Now if you go to like whatifsports.com, you can play the game. You might be able to get the results in a game in under a minute. Almost instantaneously, you'll get this whole, you'll have a gameplay. You could have a gameplay, say, between the 1927 Yankees and 1975 Reds and have all the critical stats all displayed maybe in under a minute. After, of course, you type in the information for the teams in the parameter field. So the point I'm getting to is this. Now, if somebody was to say do a research project and they were trying to write a sports article and they wanted to see, well, what was the best baseball team ever? Well, if you went to whatifsports.com and you did your little tournament and you play these simulated matchups, you can get the results much faster. But the thing about it is, when you play the board game, the Stratomatic board game, there's more suspense involved if it takes an hour or two to play a 9-inning game. And I think what I'm getting at in all this is the fact that, like in this, is this example, for example, what I'm talking about now, is that the internet a lot of times takes the suspense out of things. And if you're playing like that Stratomatic simulated sports game that I was describing before, and you're playing the board game version, not only you have more suspense as to who wins, you actually can maybe have a little better control. You could be like the manager of your baseball team as well, and you might play a strong figure more prominently in determining the outcome for your team, and you feel like you had more to do with it. Now, if you go to a simulation, you go to that whatifsports.com. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it. I've gone on there plenty of times. It's very enjoyable, and it's good for speculating on things of a speculative nature with sports and which team could beat which team in what matchup in 7-game series, whether it's NBA, baseball, or football, or what have you. But the thing about it is that when you have that suspense element lacking, and not everybody wants to know right away who wins something, who wins the, what the outcome is. Now Stratomatic, for example, they might actually still have the board game versions of these, for these games. Now, I don't know that. They may or may not. That's something I haven't verified. But the point being is that what the internet does now, as I stated before, about taking the suspense out of things, it makes things more known to you quicker than you'd really rather know it. Let's say, for example, you were trying to use another sports example. You're taping an NFL game, right? And let's say, you have people on Facebook, your social media sites that are football fanatics and NFL fanatics or what have you, and one of them blurts out on their page, well, such and such team won. They gave you the result of the game that you were trying to record. So what does one do? Does one have to avoid the internet the whole time during the game is on? I know a lot of times people will record things when they go to work. Now, granted, at work, and if you've got a lot of employees there, you might overhear somebody, they talk casually about the game and tell you and maybe actually either directly tell you that result, or you might overhear it in a conversation. So I understand that that result can be divulged and disclosed that way as well. But with the internet, there's even a greater propensity for that to happen. So what I'm saying is, people, that now the internet has so many advantages, it's not even funny, but it's important to understand some risks and some disadvantages that it has as well. And there's nothing wrong, for example, with bringing curling up with a magazine, an actual magazine, and taking, as opposed to having an ebook or looking at something online. I think what happens with a lot of us is that we're so dominated by the internet age, we actually just feel like we're going to do virtually everything on the internet, and everything else, the old way should automatically be obsolete. And I really you have to understand that doesn't always have to be the case, because there are some advantages to doing certain things in a way where the internet is not involved, as opposed to doing things those same things in conjunction with the internet. So that's basically what I wanted to say in this particular video. I mean, the internet, I've heard that, I don't remember exactly when, I think it stated on some blog online, maybe they speculate around the year 2025 maybe, that what's going to happen is we're going to have like these conferences where, let's say somebody's in China and you're talking to them. Let's say somebody's in a business meeting and one person is in the US, one is in China, one is in Russia. It's going to be like, the graphics are going to be so realistic that it's going to be like those people are literally in that same room with you when they are talking. The technology advancement is just unbelievable. It's absolutely phenomenal. We've come a long way with the internet. Alone in technology, ever since the internet came up, has really skyrocketed with all these smartphones. And I don't even know if many people even have a beeper or a pager anymore. But going back in time though, it was in a lot of ways a simpler time, and you didn't have to have all these precautions on the internet like you do now. The internet it's really facilitated things in a lot of ways, and it's made us do things a lot easier, in many things a lot easier, but it's also complicated things as well, and there's more security precautions basically one has to take, unfortunately, because of the internet. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to get at. And remember too, that don't forget about that ransomware threat. I believe that is still very prevalent, and you gotta, if you get that on your computer, then you can't get any access to anything unless you pay it. And I'm surprised that the US or whatever has not figured out a way to actually maybe detect exactly where this is coming from and actually do something about this. So the internet does cause some problems as well that really, most people understand that, but they don't really know, really always know how bad these problems can actually be, and what the end results are, and of course are not very good. So anyway, people, well, that'll conclude this YouTube segment for life before the internet, and really in about life right now in the internet era. Anyway, people, until next time, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.